Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. It has been a while since I spoke about movies on this channel. One of the reasons is, as I've said before, if you guys have been following at all, it's that the movies have literally gone to shit and no one's really producing good movies. It's a very rare occasion that good movies are being made, if at all. And I just noticed my watch list number is 69 and it's kind of distracting me. But let's get back to topic. I'm a huge movie buff and I've watched a lot of movies over the years and I really enjoy a lot of unique genres of movies that are very mind-blowing, exhilarating, movies that get your, blood and heart pumping, but also your brain thinking because I really like films that want you to go back and rewatch them. I want you to go back and talk about them, and movies that want you to keep talking about them because of how good they are and not because of how miserable some movies can be. And I think that recently the trend has been really, really poor in Hollywood side because I think a lot of American politics have been involved in the filmmaking, and you can really see that there's this woke kind of syndrome that has infected a lot of these films, and it's just really rooted itself into, I guess, the core of film production, and it's very difficult to shake away film producers from that direction. And directors, the studio, the crew, none of them can really be aligned on what is best to do. And that causes a lot of problems, which is why I think independent films have done a lot better recently. And so, before you wonder, so what kind of a movie buff are you? What kind of movies do you like? Well, I do have videos in this channel that actually showcase what are my top 10 favorite movies of all time. But to save you some time, let me just do that right here as well. So here is my list, and some of it may include you, if you can see, animations, video games, and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a good way to showcase what my favorites are. There's Star Wars Episode 5, of course. StarCraft 2, I thought was a brilliant story. And game Inception, Shawshank Redemption, Schindler's List, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, of course. Dark Knight, Shutter Island, Steins Gate, the Naruto series, I think it was great. Aside from the spoilers, of course, if you'll take that out, the core story was really, really good, especially the whole pain arc and whatnot. Slumdog Millionaire, Godfather, Code Geass, Fantasia, Game of Thrones, all of these classics, really good films over the years that have, I think everyone has fallen in love with. And yeah, some of these I think is a 8, 9, and so not, what so not. So this is my taste in movies, and I think that should cover pretty much everything you need to know. Now let me just flip back. So let's talk about how this year went, and I'm going to sort films out by what I've rated, and then I'll show you guys what has been sort of most watched, and also how they've done, I guess. So yeah, you'll use this IMDb advanced search, and we'll see how this goes. So my one of my favorite movies this year was definitely John Wick Chapter 4, and favorite TV series was definitely One Piece. I think these two have taken really close to my heart this year, and they really have helped me sort of find a love for films, especially in the past 2 years, because I've been referring to a lot of indie films like Artifice Girl. I think I've spoken about a bunch of others, and all those indie films, are way more enticing and way more interesting than the actual big budget ones that are being released by Hollywood. One Piece was very, very good because it's based on an already existing story of the One Piece anime and manga. And if you guys have watched or read either of the two, then this story would be pretty much predictable. But aside from that, the dedication for the studio to stay aligned with what the idea was and try to turn that into live action while having to improvise in certain situations, because I understand that you can't really quite capture the essence of anime style graphics, the motion, the character expressions. You can't really quite do that in live action, so you're limited by a bunch of things, but there is some ingenuity here. You can actually see that the studio has tried to pick certain actors that behave very uniquely and similarly to the anime characters, either by smiling wide or looking with big, trying to stretch their eyes open and trying to give these extreme expressions and all these very, I don't know, irritating personas. But what's or not is to try to be aligned as close as possible to how the original characters were. And you can tell that this was a production that was based off just heart. There's just so much heart in it. And you can tell that they've put good effort to try to meet the expectations of the fan base who already have gone through 1,000 episodes of One Piece, which is insane, right? So I think I'm just giving it above 5, because it's really, really well done in terms of the adaptation. So I would give it a 6. Its score is great. The actors have been picked really well. The storytelling is very good. You can really get behind the the timing of the music and the passion of the characters. And I think all that really drives it really, really well. And because I really like it, I'm going to give it just one more point to make it a 7. And that's One Piece. The second one is John Wick Chapter 4. This thing came in the first half of the year, and I'm super excited for it. And I think it was just an action-packed extravaganza. There was no real core story to this that really mattered. John Wick is not what he was from the first story. He's not as vulnerable as he used to be. And this one, he's just full superhero. And normally, I would have rated this a lot weaker because it's not realistic at all. But it was just so ridiculously fun that this film actually sort of packed all of the action styles, the different kinds of set, action pieces, I guess, and then the different kind of weapons that you could use, the elements that you could use, the types of fight choreography that you can arrange and organize, and even this top-down warehouse shooting scene. It is absolutely insane, and I think this movie is just made purely for fun and for the fans, and the fact that it ends with John Wick actually, you know, spoilers. It doesn't end very, very well for John Wick, and it's I think really well wrapped up. A good way to wrap up the character and just showcase just how insanely dedicated this crew can be when it comes to action sequences. And I think that they just want to show off as much as they can do in a single film and not care so much about the story, not care so much about the character, and not really care, basically. It was all out just showcasing this is what we can do with Keanu Reeves as a literal, superhero that can just take on the entire world. And I thought that that was ridiculously well done, super, super fun. And yeah, that's basically it. So now moving down the list is Oppenheimer. And I thought Oppenheimer was a really, really, really well done film. The cinematography, the music, the acting of the actors, I mean, I think all of them were just brilliant. Very high profile actors, very well done script. This movie is just a writing like masterclass basically because you can tell how well the characters present themselves by just the way they talk and then the timing, the cuts, the way it's going back and forth between the characters' dialogues and how intense the music can be at certain moments to just stress to you that how stressful that character can be. Oppenheimer was more so a psychological thriller or rather psychological drama than an actual, I don't know, story about a guy just making a bomb because it wasn't just purely about that. It was more so the involvement of the American politics, the Russian politics, and how a lot of people were from the Communist Party. The German politics, sorry, did I mention Russian? I think it's more so German politics. But yeah, it's how a lot of people were, from the Communist Party, the socialists, and whatnot. And I think that it was more so focusing on that aspect and it wasn't as exciting of a film. But what was really intriguing to me is that the intensity, the direction, the script writing, and all of this really spelled Christopher Nolan. And being a huge fan of his films, especially like Inception, Prestige, and whatnot, I think that if this was sci-fi and not just based on something realistic, it would have really pushed the boundaries and become a really, really good film. But being just a realistic, grounded film, it just took off as kind of boring in some parts because you know that nothing is going to happen. Like the build-up was really, really intense, but we all know what the result was, and it is basically the atom bomb that everyone has already like we sort of are in this world where it exists, right? It's nothing entirely new to us. The idea of it and the character Oppenheimer, in case you guys haven't really studied about him, then perhaps it might be something new. But especially those of us who are like myself from the engineering field, a lot of us have studied about Oppenheimer and the likes. And it's not really something very new to us. So I think the story of it was just kind of like, I know exactly what's going to happen. So it's just more so the way you tell the story that could be cool. And telling the story was extremely cool, but that's as much as I can give points for because there's not really much else, if you get what I mean. So there's not really much ingenuity. I wouldn't want to go and rewatch Oppenheimer again and again because there's nothing exciting there. It just gets dragged out to some points, and the film is pretty long. As opposed to something like John Wick Chapter 4, while this movie made me catch my breath at the end of it just because of how intense it was, I really would want to go back and go to the cinemas to sit down and watch this film just because the experience was unlike any other. It was ridiculously, ridiculously good. And I watched this film, if I'm not mistaken, in the comfort of my home. And I really regretted that I couldn't go to the cinemas. And then when I finally found out that there was a screening of it still running somewhere, I went and caught up with it, and it was so, so good. After Oppenheimer was Super Mario Brothers, and I think this movie was also really good because it stayed true to the character, like just like what One Piece did. And this is an adaptation film, right? So it was also really well done. The character of Mario was well captured, Luigi, Princess Peach, Bowser, and I think the cast was doing their best. I wouldn't say that it was the best casting. I think it could have been casted better just because I think that the people, people who are acting are good actors, but they're not really born to play that role kind of thing, and you can tell that different feeling. For example, in One Piece, the actor who plays Luffy, you can tell he really is Luffy. There's really no doubt about it. And replacing him, you can immediately tell that he's been replaced. But because this was a very voice acting kind of role, because you don't really quite see the actors themselves, you can tell sometimes that they're just like trying to do the best version of Mario, if you get what I mean. I think Chris Pratt was the one voicing him, so he did his best. He did surprise a lot of people who thought that it might not be what people think Mario is, but the idea that Mario is not going to be an Italian plumber, he's just going to be an American, an Italian man living in America kind of idea, and then he gets thrown into this other realm where he has to challenge Bowser and save Princess Peach and whatnot. So this is where the story is kind of different from the actual games itself, where Princess Peach in this case doesn't really quite get captured. Instead, there's sort of like this huge drama of they just want to stop Bowser from reaching the Peach's castle because he's going to destroy all of that. And they try to go and recruit Donkey Kong and his entire army, which is a complete failure because none of the army actually makes it to the final battle. And so I was a bit more excited for this film. I might actually drop a point here now that I think about it. But I really enjoyed it, which is why I gave it a 6. But I think I might want to drop a point. Like, honestly, this might be a 5. I'm just going to leave it as a 6 because I like it. But I would probably put it down into 5 just because the entire Donkey Kong army fighting off against Bowser's army would have been an absolute sight to behold. And I think it's just a huge missed opportunity. And Luigi and Mario having the superpower only towards the very last few seconds also didn't quite showcase what they could have done with that. Because if you take something into example like Mario fighting Donkey Kong, there was this scene where he picks up the cat ability and he starts fighting him, as a cat, and all those scenes were really well done, fun, energetic, and they could have done a lot more when they actually got the star to fight Bowser. Because Bowser, even when Mario has the star, Bowser is still pretty strong in the game at least. So they could have still showcased how powerful Bowser still is, and it could have gone down with a fight instead of just being a one shot kind of finale. And so I think the film had a lot more potential. I would have given it probably just a 5, but I'm just going to give it one more point because I think more films like this should be encouraged and should be made, and I think they deserve points just for the attempt. And yeah, it was pretty well done. I really want to watch it if there's a second movie at all, another one for sure. Now moving on to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I think this is one of the weakest Mission Impossible ever made, honestly. I really liked the fact that it took all the undertones of the recent Mission Impossible films, especially the sixth one, but this just wasn't quite it. It really was a very setup film. The idea behind it was nothing new, and AI trying to take over the world. Okay, I think we've already come to the point where every other film is going to be about AI roughly, and probably the films are written by AI too. So it's not really out of this world to say that AI taking over the world was something we saw back in Terminator, and nothing really has quite changed since then. There needs to be some ingenuity of how the humans can actually fight this AI. And in this film, they try to say like, oh, so the AI couldn't detect when they passed over a piece of key, like kind of thing, when the AI is actually literally listening to every other dialogue, to every other situation, but it misses out some random bits. Like they didn't even explain using a signal jammer or using something to cut off the AI, using an EMP to sort of knock it out temporarily so they can do this stuff. They need to show like someone cut off from the world who's actually working, by themselves remotely in a place that is away from this AI or something to help him. They could have done all kinds of ways to show you that this is how you take on a really powerful AI. But I think there's a huge miss opportunity that they didn't go down that path. And they did this weird, like, airport sequence with the robbing of the key and whatnot and back and forth, and it is a lot of back and forth because I think they didn't really have a direction of how to push this film. And towards the very end there was this train sequence where this train is like collapsing gradually, and I think the CGI for that entire sequence looked absolutely terrible, and it was very weird and off-putting, and it really left a very bad taste in my mouth towards the very end of this film because I don't know why the ending scene had to use such unrealistic effects considering how Tom Cruise generally likes to do his action, right? Like, all the middle sequences were absolutely amazing, but towards the end, I think they just couldn't quite hold it in. And yeah, it just felt very weird. So this is a very mid film for me. I really want to give it higher because I really love the Mission Impossible series, and I really want to encourage these kinds of films because I think Tom Cruise is one of the genuinely one of the only remaining. I think he's the only remaining action film star in Hollywood. Like last year he made Top Gun Maverick, this year is Mission Impossible, and whatever he does is high octane action. I absolutely love it. And with Keanu Reeves having ended John Wick in Chapter 4, I don't think there's going to be anyone else unless Keanu Reeves comes back. It's probably just going to be Tom Cruise, right? So we'll see. We'll see. Across the Spider-Verse, I think is the weaker of the two films. The first one was just hands down so much better that it had much better storytelling, much better direction, the Spider-Man being the mentor. In this one, Miles is just apparently all of a sudden able to take on an entire spider army by himself. There's a lot of, I don't know, weird stuff going on here. Like, you're telling me that the entire world of the Spider-Verse is not able to take on one Miles Morales? It's just so weird. And yeah, the dynamics between him and Gwen were also not really there. Miguel O'Hara was really well done. I think his character was really strong and very scary and threatening, but that was about it. He didn't really show his unique technology and stuff and taking on Miles, which he should have been easily able to stop. So yes, Miles has electric powers, and I think it's been seen in the video game as well that his powers are just kind of OP at this point because he's able to do literally everything he needs to and take on the entire Spider-Verse by himself. I really want to rate this film a little bit lower, but I'm just going to give it a 5 because I want to see it through because this is the first part of another film. And it's the same problem that The Reckoning has, where it's just one part of another film, so I can't quite fully judge it because we know it stops right there. I think by itself as a film, like as an end of itself, I would just give this as 4 because it doesn't really stand on its own, and that's kind of the real truth about this. So perhaps I'll leave it at the 4 and see when the second film comes whether this really makes sense. But otherwise, by itself, it doesn't really make sense. Like, yes, I know you're setting up for another film, but this film wasn't satisfying to me at all. The storytelling was not really there. The only thing that really was enticing in this film was the music and the animation, which is literally off the charts. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has one of the best animations in an animated film, period. And I absolutely love it, and I want more of it. And it has this form of psychedelic kind of very high octane kind of drawings with all these lines and grids and bubbles and whatnot. And I really like it. It's really fun. God bless those who actually, get, um, I don't know, get into a fit watching these kinds of films. Like, I really feel bad for you. Strobing lights and whatnot, just warning, that's going to be it. Gran Turismo, a really unexpected film. I really enjoyed it. I think this is a very good movie. It's a mid movie for sure because the main character was kind of weak and the story was really driven by what's his name? The guy who acted as Harper in Stranger Things. David Harbour, yes, David Harbour and Orlando Bloom really drove this film really, really well. I think they really carried it. I think Archie Madekwe, if that's what I'm saying is right, played reasonably well for his role, but I don't think it was strong enough to really carry this film to become something that was really, really out there. Also, some of the scenes of them just showcasing that they can do CGI while the car was on the track was nice to say the least, but it's kind of cheesy. I don't really see the point. They could have actually drawn out the race a little bit more. But one thing I really appreciate from this film is that they took the time to do some of the races that I didn't think that they would. They really went the lengths to show off a lot more in the film, and the film was a lot longer than I expected it to be. It is 2:14, which is actually pretty long, and I think it could have gone a little bit longer, maybe to 2:30. Just give 15 more minutes of depth just to show some emotions, some character storytelling. I don't know. I'm literally just reviewing this, guys, so I'm sure these people who direct these films know so much more of what they can do and would have probably thought about it. And I don't know, they must have removed some of those moments for some reason. Maybe they thought it's too drawn out, too, draggy or whatnot. But I think that this story just lacked depth, and that's all they needed to go a little bit higher. But I really would recommend you guys to watch Gran Turismo because it's based on a true story of a real life racer who's still around, and he was basically born of the game Gran Turismo, which is a real life sort of simulation game of the actual motorsports, right? So it's pretty cool. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I absolutely love this film. This is really, really fun. By itself, the film is kind of weak. It doesn't really stand against, stand the test of time against a lot of other films made over the years, but it's definitely better than the first Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I unfortunately watched. Man, God bless whoever, thought of that. Yeah, but regardless, this movie was really fun. I think the characters did a great job. It was just weird that they didn't stay true enough to the D&D lore in the sense where the bard, for some reason, just didn't have any abilities. Like, none of these people, like, they didn't showcase magic very well. I think the Warcraft film showed magic a lot better, and this one it was just here and there kind of thing. Yeah, I know you have spell slots and whatnot, so you want to reserve on that, but it's kind of a hard cap. We also don't quite know what these characters' limits are truly well in a fight, and like towards the last scene they all of a sudden can come together and take on the big bad when we never saw them practicing or even doing that in the earlier parts because they sort of reformed the team. So it's kind of weird because they didn't really show these characters building up towards it. Like in a regular D&D, you will have characters go through smaller missions to actually build themselves, go to a shop, get some equipment, prepare themselves, and all of that. And this one, they sort of end up in a weird situation where they capture and they have to fight off their way out of the lair, sort of thing. They get thrown into like a coliseum to do a fight and whatnot, and everything is just conveniently available for them to figure out. And it's just not quite the story that it could have been, but I think it had so much potential because it was a really fun and funny movie, and the comedy is what tried to drive this film. Although I think Chris Pine's Bart should have definitely had some abilities to literally even the playing field because that would have been so much more fun. But I think it was a very good passion project, and I think this film does have a chance to get a sequel and do really, really well. It can be its own niche thing. It doesn't have to be the top charts and whatnot. I think it can sit comfortably at a 5 out of 10 for years to come. And I think that itself makes it a movie that has still done better than a lot of other films that I feel from this year. As you can see, the audience score is 7.3, 200,000 people watched it. I'm really glad these people really enjoyed the film and gave it a high rating. I would too. I would give it a 7 or 8 if you ask me because I really, really loved it. But I have to be objective in my rating, and so I'm gonna have to give it a little bit weaker just because it's not that great of a film. There are better movies out there. There's literally like the entire Spider-Man films from Sam Raimi that are just like hands down way better than these. There's like all the Star Wars films that you got to challenge with. There's all these movies like MacGyver stories, and then there's just so many films to compete with. Terminator. I can't give all of them the same rating to you know so I have to push this down a little bit. So yeah, understand me, guys. I really like this movie. Trust me. It's all over my channel. Anyway, Equalizer 3. I thought this was a really good movie. It's definitely weaker than the first two. Equalizer movies have just been always a little fun movie in its own pocket kind of thing, its own realm kind of thing. I think Equalizer 3 was still done pretty well. You can always say that, like, what's his name? Oh man, keep forgetting his name. Give me a second. Let me load. There we go. Denzel Washington. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Denzel. I really love you. But yeah, Denzel Washington is really able to carry this movie by himself. He really does it so, so well. I think the first two movies were really enjoyable because it's sort of a new premise, and it tries to do something different. This guy always looks at his watch and tries to time his fights, and then he takes on bad guys, and he's sort of this good Samaritan kind of story. I think Equalizer 3 did really well by itself. It could have even done well as a TV series, but sometimes it gets a little bit too draggy, and sometimes the fights are like not satisfying enough because you'd expect him to do like he kills some very bad guys in some very satisfying ways, and some of the other fights are just not really drawn out. Like you understand that he's a little bit older. Yes, he's an assassin, but because he's a little bit older, Mr. McCall still should find some other ways of taking on his opponents, maybe a bit more ingenuity, and we didn't quite see it here. He's just still as strong as ever, able to do whatever he needs to. But yeah, that's the third one. Moving on to The Covenant, I thought this movie was okay. It's a very good friendship story at its core. There's sort of that kind of not even a friendship. It's like a good Samaritan understanding story at its core. Like there's a guy who just wants to help you because he knows how important you are, and he knows that you are trying to do the best you can for his people, and he sort of comes back around kind of thing. The deed comes back kind of thing, and I think the Covenant was really, really well done. Filmmaking was good, action sequences were decent, storytelling was okay, acting was subpar. The actors are really good, but I felt there was nothing really special there. It's not like you can go back and be like, oh my God, that was such a good scene. Look at his expressions and look at the weight of the film, and or the music and the scene, you don't really feel it. It's not like it's like okay, so they want to move on to the next part. Let's just move on. It's sort of done like that. I felt it was half-assed. It could have been done a little bit better. Regardless, I think it's based on a true story as well. I can't quite remember, but at least that's what it looks like. It could be a book, and I could be wrong. It could be one of those Tom Clancy stories that's done on the side. Let's see. Is it? Is it a story? Is it a book? Um, I am not sure. I think it's based on a true story. I'm just gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, that's the Covenant. Renfield was pretty fun. Renfield was, I think, just a showcase of why Nicolas Cage is so fun. And it had potential. It really had potential to push it. I really want to rate this a little bit lower just because it had so much potential, but it didn't take some moments. But it was fun. It was in its own little kind of niche area, which very few people watch. It's like dark comedy, and it's not the funniest thing. It's not the scariest thing. It's literally like a half-ass effort of taking on both the genres, right? It's a 50-50 for both sides. So I'm going to give it a 4 because I think the actors still played a very good part. The dynamics between Nicolas Cage and sort of his like the Dracula, right, basically, and Renfield, Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult. I think the dynamics between them was still very well done, but the rest of the characters didn't really add anything. Ben Schwartz, Aquafina, none of these people did anything to really help this film. I think all of them were absolutely useless side characters, and this film was purely carried by both the Nicholases. And it had potential. I really want to give it higher, but I think that it's going to stay where it is. I would want to give it a 3, but I still feel, they deserve a little bit more because they really tried their best. You can really tell how much of effort was put in by Nicolas Cage, and yeah, I think that's basically it. Dracula, like Nicolas Cage has so much potential. Like you can literally see him still act in a today, current day movie and still do so well. But I think he goes for all these niche little films because he enjoys it, and I think that you can see that in him. He's really enjoying playing that role. And that enthusiasm kind of rubs off, and you kind of feel like, man, this is just fun because of how well he's doing. But the movie itself, objectively, is just bad. But I would recommend people to watch this because the comedy is still pretty good. It's decent movie. I wouldn't say it's the worst or the best. I would want to give it a 3 actually. I'm gonna adjust some of the ratings here. So yeah, it's okay. It's not the worst, but there are far more bad movies this year, so I think this is still worth a watch. Extraction 2, very action-packed. Really built itself well for one or two very good action sequences, but that's about it. The story in itself is extremely predictable, nothing really special there. Chris Hemsworth does his best. He is really very much the macho character that you want him to be in this, unlike in the recent Thor films. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt of saying that this was definitely one of his better films and the kind of movie he belongs in, just because he is sort of acting the part. You can see that you look at this dude, you think he can do it. Right, if you put him in this kind of situation, a soldier that looks like this, is built like this, is able to move like this in these action sequences, you can really believe that he's able to embody the role of this kind of special ops kind of soldier to go in a rescue mission, almost a suicide mission sometimes, and get the extraction done. And that's totally believable, but the story really falls flat. There's really nothing carrying, no weight given to it. And so Extraction 2, I feel, was a really, really good, kind of weekend film or a TV film that you can just sit down and watch on Netflix, and that's it. Get over it, and you're done. It's time to move on. There's nothing really to come back here to talk about. Plane was a very weak movie. When I watch all these plane kind of hostage situations, it always takes me back to Air Force One, which is Harrison Ford. And it was a really, really, really good movie that always, like, I think I watched that movie like at least 20, 30 times, and it's such a good movie that, and I watch these kind of movies, it's just too weak for me. I think if Air Force One came out today, I would still give it at least a 7 because of just how enticing the film is and the premises and the president trying to be the only person who can save himself sort of thing. Plane just wasn't any of it, and hit a very very messy ending that had everything just sort of line up for it perfectly to try to solve its own problems. The characters didn't really think of any proper way to find a way or an escape route or take advantage of a situation. Everything is just very convenient for them. Luckily, they were lucky enough the prisoner can fight, and everything just works out. And yeah, there wasn't really anything too bad. I think the only really story that really played off very well here was actually the story of the prisoner himself. I think is this guy. No, no, wait, Michael Coulter, right? Okay, it's Nicholas Cage. Sorry, Nicholas Cage. What am I saying? It's Luke Cage, the actual Luke Cage. Mike Coulter. Mike Coulter. I think his character, his story, and his story to his family and whatnot, I think was kind of what really drove this film. And I think the rest of the characters is sort of just in his movie, like it's his movie, it's his world kind of thing, and everyone else is actually the side character. And I think that's the core story here. It's not so much about the captain, played by Gerard Butler, but more so the character of Mike Coulter and his family story and how he's trying to just get back and survive. And he was convicted for something unfortunate, and so That's, I think, where the story really lies. It's still a good movie. You probably should watch it. Now, I'm a huge Zack Snyder fan. I think you guys know this from my previous film reviews and whatnot, but I'm going to have to give Rebel Moon Part 1 a 3 out of 10. And there's a very, very important reason for it. This was a bad movie. Let's not kid ourselves here. Now, I'm a huge fan of Zack Snyder because of his visual style, his direction, his ability to typecast really, really well. And I think it also comes down to the fact that he's often backed up by really good cameramen and often backed up by really good storytellers. And Zack Snyder isn't either of those. He is able to tell exactly how to run the scene, how to decide the camera work, and how to get that achieved because his technical ability is so good and so profound on set that you can literally see videos of people talking about him like he's a documentary. Like the way he can get these people together to work and basically be the director and tell the cameraman, you got to be in this position to do this. This is the timing. This is the equipment you got to use. This is how you got to do it. This is the technique to get it done. This is how the commercials are shot because that's what Zach does most of the time. Um, it's really, really cool to see that he's able to achieve that with the right people in the team, but he's not a very good player. So it's not like in a football game where he's just a very good manager, but you can't really put him on the pitch to play because he's just a manager at this point, and that's what he specializes in. Expecting him to play the both roles is not going to be as effective. And you can really see that in Rebel Moon because I think everything relied on just him. And again, I feel that there were times where you can clearly see that this film is also influenced by some sort of agenda, political agenda for sure. Despite the cast, the huge, male-dominated cast, the very strong male characters here, the main character Sofia Boutella, who plays Cora, was just not strong enough to carry this film because you can't really understand why she's able to take on just huge hulking soldiers, and some of the situations are just very poorly drawn out. The story was very weak. Everything just felt very cut. This entire film felt like a director's cut to cuts, like cuts of the cut kind of thing. Like the actual movie is just missing, and this is just like paths or clips of the film that you can see. So it sort of showcases Snyder's ability to direct what do you call these kinds of trailers and these kinds of commercials because he's able to get these wonderful sequences and cuts in, but all the in between stuff is where he needs help, and I think he really has to find that help to hopefully get part 2 done properly. Otherwise, I don't really see him going any further than these. I really think that he should do very huge, big blockbuster films. And I really hope that one day he gets a chance to actually work on another film with Christopher Nolan, because I think those two are huge, big buddies, and I mean they're close buddies, and you can tell that they really want to work on big films, and they're huge movie buffs as well. They often watch big films together, I hear, and so that kind of information really tells you that he has everything he needs. He just has to get it all in the right place at the right time. And if you ask me, knowing a movie like this, he would have called on some big friends, but I think he was truly limited by the budget provided to him. And you can tell that compared to a lot of other movies being produced these days, the budgets are quite inflated and you can't quite get what you need as a director sometimes. And I think as an effort, Rebel Moon Part 1 was an effort. It's a movie, but it's a 3 out of 10 for me. It's definitely a movie that's worth watching compared to all of the new Star Wars films. I think everything after episode 6 is definitely trumped by this film. I think Rebel Moon Part 1 is definitely better than Disney Star Wars as a whole. There's no doubt about it. But you don't have to look at this as a Star Wars film because in its core, it's not really a Star Wars film. Because I think Star Wars was mostly driven by the Force because it's this Jedi and Sith kind of dynamic that really made Star Wars what it is. Like you can take everything else in the film and remove the Jedi and Sith dynamic and it becomes something like Star Trek. I don't know. It's just not as strong. And Rebel Moon is definitely not a Star Wars film because it's not really that. It's more so goes back to the origin of where Star Wars got its idea from, which is Seven Samurai, A Magnificent Seven, these kind of films of recruiting a team and taking on the Empire, taking on the bad guys. And that's where Star Wars got its inspiration from, and Rebel Moon is just trying to do the same thing. And I think that both these films, or both of these franchises, have what the core idea is aligned. It's just that Star Wars, the episode 1 to 6 especially, had very good writers on it, had very good directors, very competitive time as well for Lucasfilm and Steven Spielberg, and all the people who were involved. I think it really showed in that entire franchise, especially Episode 5 changing directors and all that shenanigans. Right, Star Wars really had so much love and care given to it, And this Rebel Moon being a Netflix film, you can really tell that it sort of lacks that love and care because the crew, cast, and all of that just wasn't strong enough. And despite having some good actors in the right places, if you see a film where the director, writer, cinematographer is like literally all done by the same person, you can tell that he's sort of wearing too many hats. And I think that this is a very poor showcase of Zack Snyder's ability. And so I'm going to have to be honest, I'm a huge fan of him, but I have to give this film a 3 out of 10. Moving on to The Killer, I thought this was a very unique film by itself, but the entire movie just dies after the first 30 minutes. It was new in the first 30 minutes, and the rest of it is super predictable. Nothing really special going on here. I still think it's a good weekend film just because the first half an hour is worth your time. But after that, it's just like I've like anyone can write that. You can write that. I can. I'm telling you now, you can write the rest of the story, and it's super predictable. Directing it, I'm not so sure about that, but hey, this film didn't really require any special talents because the action sequences were not that great. I think that some of it was pretty darn realistic in the sense where this guy is just sort of a hitman and not really so much of an assassin kind of fighter. He's just more of a long range fighter. And so while he does have some moves to be able to take on some close combat opponents, he can't really take on every person, and you can really see that he has to find ways around to fight those people. Although you would expect him to rely a bit more on some tools and gadgets and some ingenuity, you don't really quite see that intelligence in the killer, and I think that's where it really fell short. Michael Fassbender, though, I really like him. I think he did pretty well in his role, and I think that this film really had opportunity. It could have been a sort of a mini James Bond film, and it just wasn't really that. And I'm talking about the older Bond films, not the very new high octane ones. It could have just been a very core kind of assassin story that tells you that this guy has to, just stay alive and evade trouble. But it ended up becoming another one of those mission, like, soldier gone rogue or assassin gone rogue kind of story where he's just like, oh, the entire agency is against you now. Good luck. It's just one of those films. It's so predictable. So every movie becomes this. Like, why can't we just be realistic and admit that if the assassin were left by themselves, sort of one day cut off from the agency, they would be dead in an instant. There's no way they can survive. And you can see this in real life. You do hear about news of spies being caught, overseas, and there's really no way the agency can reach out to them and really help them because they just cover is screwed, and at that point they're kind of useless to them. A lot of times these kind of people just bite on some cyanide and just call it a day. But I really want to watch a film where the agency is still fully backing up these people. Like Mission Impossible has gone rogue for like the fifth time. You really want to see where the agency is actually backing up these people through and through and try to do a proper movie of a proper hitman agency taking on like a bad guy's agency. And I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, Killer was still first 30 minutes are pretty good. Five Nights at Freddy's, very weak film. I really want to rate this a 2. I think it deserves a weaker rating here. It had so much potential because of the franchise, and this is one of those examples of just trying to get the fans based on the franchise and then absolutely ruining all expectations. And if you tell people that you should go to this film without expectations, you're an idiot because this is based on existing IP. And anything that is based off an existing IP has expectations. There's no doubt about it. If you say that, oh, you shouldn't have high expectations, that means it's already expected to be a bad movie. You should have high expectations, and the movie should be able to meet them. And that's how movies were made. That's how Indiana Jones was made, all the way until whatever Crystal Skull came out, right? The first three movies are, especially the first one, you can tell the second and third movie had high expectations and it delivered because that's how much love and care is put into those films and how talented the cast and crew are. And you can really see it. And nowadays, all these films just are full of trash. Blue Beetle. I think Blue Beetle was not a bad movie. It's just that it's a movie that belongs in 2006 or 2007, whenever the time Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was running. And I think if Blue Beetle came out at that time, it would have done okay. So it feels like a very dated film where the plot premise and the characters are just very weak. The actors are nothing special. And you could literally cast this film next to the likes of Spider-Man 2 and see how weak the cast were compared to the cast that were chosen at the time. And I really don't want to downplay some of these actors because I think Zolo, I'm not sure, Solo, however you pronounce his name, did a great job. And I think he's an example of a very enthusiastic actor stuck in a poorly done film. And I think he had so much potential to be the real, like, proper Blue Beetle. Like, he could have really done this. Like, this had potential. But, having a very weak villain, who was the villain? This some lady. I don't know, some very, yeah, it's just a very weak crew, very weak villain and it really just didn't stand very well. And this is the director. Angel Manuel Soto is a salesman, flight attendant. Okay, I mean that doesn't matter. If he's a good director, he's a good director. But look at all these movies. This is like I don't know. The Farm is his best movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's very different from like when you pick a director for a superhero movie that you want to do well. Like for example, Spider-Man 2 picks Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi had a very good portfolio, and Sam Raimi was really talented, and so the cast and crew really came together really, really well in that film. All the actors were very good, very talented. Like each and every one of them, you can watch separately in the movie. That's how good it was. And nowadays, I feel that these movies are weak because the cast is not good, and to back it up, the script is just horrendous. And you sort of waste that talent in that kind of film. And that's what Blue Beetle was. I still think it deserves a 3 out of 10 just because of the efforts put in by some of the characters. And again, it's not a bad movie, it's just a movie that is completely outdated for its time. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think I already made a review for this actually separately. And I think this is the weakest of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I really hated this movie. It's absolutely disgusting, very weird, very random. I don't know what is happening here. The crew doesn't even look like them. They don't even look like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't even know if they're actually saving anyone here. The villain was weak. The story was weak. I don't know what's wrong with Nebula here. Why everyone's just wearing some weird stuff and looking. I mean, I get it. The premise of Guardians of the Galaxy is that it is a weird film. James Gunn wants it to be as weird as possible. But man, this was disgusting. I don't know what on earth was happening in this movie. At the core of this film was a beautiful story of Rocket Raccoon, who has been tortured, and there's some kind of animal abuse kind of story going on here. And this movie, having some very stressful scenes. Um, there were some very questionable, disturbing scenes that were done in this. And it also had the best Marvel villain of post Endgame, the High Evolutionary. I think this guy Chukwudi Iwuji, if I'm saying it correctly, played the villain so well. High Evolutionary was a really well motivated villain. And now that I think about it, just for the villain, and I think the stronger backstory of the villain and the animal abuse thing, I'm going to give this film actually a 5. I think this film deserves a mid. It's not better than the previous Guardians. I don't think it is that strong. Maybe can compete with Guardians 2, but it really lacked in a lot of other aspects because the rest of the Guardians just felt like side characters. Like everyone felt like a side character because they needed a story for Rocket and they were not sure how to handle everyone else. It really felt like the Rocket Raccoon movie, and the villain was the High Evolutionary, and that's when the Guardians were just trying to help Rocket, trying to get through this. And I think James Gunn really tried his best here and tried to do something unique, and it could have been done a lot better. And please don't credit Stan Lee for this. Stan Lee didn't write this. I don't know. Maybe he did before he passed, but R.I.P. Um, and yeah, but the rest of the story was kind of weak. It just didn't showcase the talents of the team, didn't showcase what they can do. The first two Guardians really did that and sort of brought the crew together as a proper superhero team. And this one, I don't quite know what they're trying to do. It's very misleading, very weird, and then everything sort of conveniently lines up when they go to the random places. Even when they are facing against adversaries, they sort of just have everything at hand magically. It's like Doraemon, right? They just pull things out of the pocket. They don't really quite plan out for it or tell you how it's going to work out. Like a good example is the first Iron Man film. In Iron Man, you can already see that Iron Man had to plan out how his suit is built, how his armor is, prepared. Everything was, sort of drawn out for us as an audience to understand that, okay, this is the Iron Man suit, and he can do all this because he has the Iron Man suit. We don't even know what Star Wars weapons do until today. It's just he has a gun, he has some boots, and sometimes he throws stuff, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he can shoot different directions, sometimes he can't. Sometimes he flies differently, sometimes he doesn't. It's very confusing. We don't really know what Star-Lord actually does, like properly. Gamora just fights people, and so does Drax, and so does Nebula, and so does Groot. Groot's supposed to do some fancy stuff. Okay, Groot does some fancy stuff. That's fine. Adam Warlock, whatever that is, that was not Adam Warlock. I think I mentioned this in my review. That is Adam Wokelock or Goldilock. That is not Warlock. Okay? I don't ever want to see that shit ever again in a film. And I think that's why I gave this a weaker rating. You know what? I'm going to give it back a 4. Just because I don't know what on earth happened there with that casting. Like, I think the actor by himself was okay because I think he has done a lot more films and he has potential. But he was just given the worst character to play. Fast X. This is literally family going nuts. I think this movie was ridiculously fun, but it is a ridiculous movie, and so I'm gonna have to give it a 3. A very weak cast and crew, very poor storytelling, really no premise, no idea, no direction. It's just them showcasing that they can do whatever the fuck they want basically, and you're gonna have to want to just eat that and just deal with it, and you're just gonna like everything they do because oh, Vin Diesel, Family Guys, and then that's pretty much it. You rather watch Family Guy. Meg 2, The Trench. This was bad. This movie I thought had potential. The first Meg was actually kind of interesting. It had a premise, and this one they just went a bit more insane and off the charts. And I think it's sort of an unhinged, like Fast X. It's like sort of like when you've already done a series or a film that's sort of unhinged, and you're not sure where to take the second one because you already have done all those extreme tropes that you just lose your shit and you get high on weed and then you write the second story. And that's what happened for these two. Evil Dead Rise. Oh man, I was so disappointed. The first Evil Dead, sort of the like the remake of Evil Dead, I thought was really good. This one has a better trailer than the film. And don't get me wrong, the first original Evil Dead was the best. There's no doubt about it. I think it was just weak because it's a film that's really out of its time. And when I watched it, which was a lot later, I don't know. I want to give it a bit higher. Maybe a 6 would be the most because it is a pretty scary, very well done film. But it just didn't quite do it for me. I felt like it's just weak because I watched it like in 2000s and it wasn't really good. The remake of Evil Dead though was really intense, really well done, and I think this was a film that really deserves a good rating because you can really feel your heart pumping, adrenaline pumping action where this thing keeps chasing after you and you're trying to get away from it and it just keeps coming and you have to keep fighting it. And I think Evil Dead, the first one, the remake really did that. In this one, it's just like they're all in some apartment and the story keeps going on and then one person's haunted and people don't even try to fight it properly. They don't even have a plan to try to think how to execute this thing, just deal with it, and it's very off-putting. I don't know, it's a very out of place film, and it could have been done better. If you really have nothing else to watch and you want a horror movie, you can watch Evil Dead Rise. Otherwise, I would recommend you watch Scream 5. Scream 5, yeah. Scream 6, which is this one, was absolutely terrible. It's becoming a woke Scream, which is what I think it's becoming. Because Scream itself, the original story Scream, was known for the fact that it was a very unique plot. It had a very unique plot twist, right? It was a story that was done really, really well because it had a very unique twist. It had a premise that was unlike any other, and it was a horror film that no one expected um, would think of that kind of idea. It was a parody of all the horror films combined, and I think this is still trying to be a parody of sorts, except it was very weak. It didn't quite wasn't quite able to do that. And the original Scream, if you look at the cast, you can see how it was pretty balanced, right? A lot of these characters, especially these actors, I think they did a really good job in trying to showcase their ability, their talent and the situations. And even then, Scream got the better of them. Like the two killers actually got the better of them. The original killer was what's his name? It's not here. Billy, right? Billy. Oh man, what's Billy something? Billy. Oh man, it's not coming to me. But um, did they write it here? Couldn't Billy? No, Billy Loomis. There we go. Yeah, it's Billy Loomis. So the story and the character of Billy Loomis at this point is kind of overdone. Yeah, they really need to think of new ways to execute this film and to build up the tension. In this one, it just felt too casual at times, and then when the killer does come in, it didn't quite build up for the tension that you would expect it to. I think the previous Scream, this one, the remake of the Scream franchise, which is I think this Scream, yeah, this Scream, the 2022 Scream. Am I seeing that correctly? With Jack Quaid, right? Yeah. Yes, this one was done a lot better, I think, because it sort of stayed true to the Scream franchise, and it built up the tropes that it needed to, and it just executed it. It just went for the jugular. It didn't really think too hard or to try to do too many things. And this one, they had their little characters trying to build and try to redo the story again, and all of them sort of have gone through this, and most of them have seen the Scream Killer before because of the previous story, and this time they're acting all casual about it. It's just very out of place. You know what? I think this deserves a lower rating just because we don't need films like this. This is just bad. Like I don't know why. Like you'd rather watch Evil Dead Rise. Honestly, it's still a much better movie than this one. I could give this a 4 and it'd still be a pass. I think, yeah. The Pope's Exorcist. This is an absolutely terrible sci-fi flick. I don't know what this was. This wasn't a horror movie. This was a sci-fi flick with Russell Crowe just trying to fight the demon with his bare hands, kind of thing. It literally was like the concept of Father Gabriel Amorth, because this is based on a true story. Apparently, was a good idea. Like this guy who's very casual about the way he takes on demons, and he's like, oh, this is not a demon. This is a dude who's got some psychological problems, and it's like, oh, that's demon. That's how you gotta beat a demon up, and I'm gonna do this, and I know everything because I'm the Pope. That would have been a decent premise. A premise where you have this really, really strong character who's put into a difficult situation but is able to handle himself because he's just so skillful would have been amazing. This was not that. It was something else entirely. I really want to give this a lower rating just because I think that we don't deserve this kind of movies, especially considering the potential of other movies out there. Is one of the weaker horror films for sure. The Boogeyman. I think The Boogeyman is not the worst movie in the world. I also think it's pretty indie from the looks of it, but I feel like this was a movie that really didn't know what it was doing. There was a lot of moments in this where it's like you already know that there is this creature out and about, but the family just never really talks. And I think one of the funny reviews I read is like the American, for some reason there's no lights in America or something like that. Where is it? I think I've read this review somewhere here. Um, there's one that said there's like no lights or whatever in America. It's so funny because it's 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 not what you quite expect from these kind of movies. Like we are at the point where horror movie audiences are a lot more intelligent, and you keep thinking that we're still kids trying to watch these films. Like people have seen a lot of these tropes before, and you really got to do something new. And the Boogeyman wasn't just able to deliver any of those, but I still think it had potential, and probably it's the same rating as the Pope's Exorcist. Now that I think about it, but there's just so many good horror films out there, and I can name you a few. If you guys are horror movie buffs, let me just pull out a few for you guys. So here you go. Here's my list of the horror movies that I really like. I think Scream was pretty good. Um, let's see. Stranger Things, The Exorcist, It Follows, Cabin in the Woods, Haunting of Hill House, Life, Evil Dead, Paranormal Activity. The Shining, Conjuring. I know some of you didn't like Paranormal Activity, but I liked it. Conjuring, Dawn of the Dead, Wreck, Grave Encounters. Grave Encounters is really good. It's like a found footage film. I actually want to give this more. I really enjoyed it when it came out. But it's man, you know what? It's actually not that good of a film, but I really liked it. It's really really good. Conjuring 2. Yeah, it's 7. I think Conjuring is still better. Conjuring 2. They both unique in their own way. I think they both filled in a very unique role. Actually, for a horror movie, I think. Mm. Conjuring 2 that made Valak so good that they can build a franchise off it. I think that gives it a slightly higher rating, right? Yeah, I think Conjuring 2 is slightly higher just because they managed to build an entire franchise of Valak for years to come. It's so well done. The character is so well built. The Purge, 28 Days Later, Us, Orphan, Hereditary. I think this one can go 7 actually. It's very creepy at times. The Orphan, no, I think Orphan deserves an 8. It's very well done. I Am Legend was pretty good. 7, Evil Dead, the original, 6. Yeah, there you go. So there's some horror movies for you guys to look forward to if you are a horror movie buff, but these were really, really weak. Citadel. Um, I didn't enjoy this movie. I think it deserves a 2 actually instead of a 3. Like, okay, here's the thing. If you guys have never watched an action film, never watched like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, never watched like I don't know, like any of the James Bond series, any of the Jason Bourne series, you're like, oh wow, super spies. Oh, they fight in a train, and they actually are like linked with this, like group, and there's Citadel, and they got bad guys after them. If you guys don't know any of these tropes, Citadel is good. If you guys know all of that, Citadel is written by someone who has watched all of that, and they're 12. Rocky Our Rani came. Okay, this is a movie that ended up here on my list because I think my wife forced me to watch this film. And this is a fun little movie. It's a very weird decision where the husband and wife try to live in each other's houses to try to learn about each other's families before they get married, sort of thing. So it's kind of funny in its own way. Um, but it doesn't have a real direction. Like there's no real objective to this. So if you really want to just turn off your brain and just have some fun, this might be a good Hindi movie for you guys to check out. You might need subs for it if you don't understand Hindi. I need subs for it. I fully understand it, but it was pretty fun by itself. The music is very nice. Characters are very well done. I think the actor and actress. Wait, are these two husband and wife? No, I don't think so. Yeah, but they're all within like the cinema, right? So Bollywood stuff. Anyway, Family Plan. I think Family Plan was a fun weekend watch. I watched it because there's really literally nothing else to watch. But it's a very bad movie. You know what? You know what really tells me a good movie? Okay, so Family Plan is like this dad who's an ex-assassin and he has to come back to sort of he suddenly gets chased by people who used to work used to have him as an assassin. Turns out that the person who needs him back is like sort of his dad who wants him back because he needs his abilities and whatnot. And he has a family now, so he wants to leave his family behind. So it's like a family dad assassin story. And the family is really stupid. They don't realize anything that's happening around them. The most intelligent person in the family is the baby. This one, Ileana Norris, the baby who acted so ridiculously well that it's just broken. This baby is so talented. I don't understand how this baby can act so well. 2006? Wait, are you an older kid? So, so let's say the movie was made in 2022. You're like 10, 14 years old. You're 14 years old. Really? So was there an actual baby in this at all? There was an actual baby, right? Somewhere. So there's two actors for Max Morgan. Liana and Vienna. Oh, that is so weird, guys. And and Iliana is a he? I am confused. These are confusing times. I'm very confused, okay? Just don't mind me. It's a very confusing movie. I still think the best spy in a family sort of story still goes back to the pacifier. Yeah, I think the pacifier still stands out to be one of the best spy in a family situation, and it's just so well done. I'm gonna give this a 7. Screw everything else. I'm gonna give this a 7. This is such an enjoyable movie that you can rewatch, and it's also like a fun little family story that, you know, in its core is just so well done that all these movies that come out after that that try to stick around the same premise or the same idea just don't quite survive. They don't stand a chance, honestly. Yeah, that's what Family Plan was. The creator, I don't really know what was attempted here, but it's like a attempt at a sci-fi with big budget of a very predictable story of a girl that's the key to everything. And I think that is kind of like the trend of all the recent Disney Star Wars movies, even Rebel Moon, right? A girl who's the key to everything. But in this one, it's just so predictable that the girl is just the most powerful thing in the world. She's able to fight, turn off all the AI stuff because she can just control the AI. That's basically how the humans defeat the AI. That's the idea here. Nothing special. Like, what did you expect? Right? Okay, so that's it. Moving on. Transformers Rise of the Beast, the weakest of the Transformers franchise. I honestly think that Michael Bay's Transformers was not bad. Especially the first two, I think was really, really good. It pretty much started going downhill from the third one because I think the direction was lost and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and they're not knowing what to do. And knowing Michael Bay, he just gets higher and higher on weed, honestly. I think so. I'm sorry, Michael Bay, I really like you, but I don't know what you're trying to do after Transformers 3. But Rise of the Beast was very weak because it tried to recreate, sort of redo the Transformers franchise in a way without the intensity of Michael Bay and also without the intensity of the cartoons. Because to be honest, this is like the closest, like most accurate version of Optimus Prime and the Transformers that you're probably going to get in the in this this franchise film. But if you guys watch Transformers 19, is it 87? Um, 19. What do I feel like it's an 87 film? 86? Oh, 86. Okay, so okay, this is the movie. So Transformers 1986, the movie. I think this is still the best Transformers story ever made. And the TV series that was running at the time was also brilliant. And if they tried to recreate something like this with the premise, it would have been pretty cool. But you must understand, this film had a lot of things backing it up. It had an entire TV series story going on. It had, a great cast for all the other voice actors. Ultra Magnus was a very interesting character. What's his name? Hot Rod was a very cool and interesting character, very macho character, something that I don't think that the films would do nowadays. The only macho character in all the new Transformers movies is Optimus Prime. Everyone knows Optimus Prime, and no one cares to know any of the other Transformers because the films just don't give enough weight or character to all of the others. Back then, all of these other characters. Astro Train, Ultra Magnus, Grimlock, RC. You know all these people. Devastator was such a cool thing. And Arthur Burgard with his voice. It's just these things were insane and so well done. And wait, why didn't they show Hot Rod here? That's interesting that they didn't list out Hot Rod when he turns out to literally be the main character of this story. Very interesting. Rodimus Prime, you're not here. Okay. And yeah, that turns out a lot weirder than I thought, but okay. So they just don't quite have the direction, the character building. Like they don't care enough about the Transformers that they just turn out to be these big CGI monsters that just want to transform and fight robots, but they don't have a backstory. They don't know how to tell the story of the Transformers or humanize them. And while Michael Bay's Transformers sort of perfected that idea where you don't have to care about the Transformers, you have these humans to care about, and the Transformers are just there as these sort of monsters that you just deal with, and you just have to know about Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, and you're good to go. That was very, very bad. Like, that was completely against all of the original Transformers series, which is why people have problems with Michael Bay's, other than the CGI mess. People have problems with Michael Bay's story who were original fans of Transformers because of that, because the characters weren't given enough weight. In the original series, you can actually like each and every one of the Transformers, and that helped to sell toys for years, where people would go and buy a specific Transformer as a toy because they know that character so well and they like that character and they're like, this character is cool because he does this and he says this, and this RC is cool because RC transforms into this cool bike. She's cute and she's able to travel fast, and she can do all these support things, and she's able to take on bad guys as well, and she can do all this cool stuff. You don't have that here anymore. You don't care about RC. You don't care about anything else. And that's what Transformers has become, and yeah, it's really bad. Shazam Fury of the Gods has faced my fury in ratings and is a 2 out of 10. Do I even have to explain? If you guys watch this movie, you know the problems with it, but I think that it's really unfortunate because they had a very good casting for Shazam himself. I think I'm talking about Asher Angel, not Zachary Levi. I think Zachary Levi could have been recast, but to play that funny sort of Shazam character, Zachary Levi has potential. But in this one, he's just weird. And I don't know if the problem is Rachel Zegler. I'm just kidding. She's not the problem in this, but there's a lot of problems. I think the crew, I think the entire Shazam family became the problem because they didn't build Shazam enough to matter. And when the entire family has powers, he matters even less. And towards the end, they sort of try to give him a redemption arc where he's like trying to sacrifice himself to save everyone, but he's gonna live anyway, so there's really no weight to it, and that's about it. That's the movie. There's nothing really there. The Flash. Woo, this was a hot mess. I don't understand why Warner Brothers just wants to waste money and decided to make The Flash. Right. I get it. You want to bring Michael Keaton back because, oh, everyone loves him as Batman. Let's bring him back, and that might help the film. And you know what this entire movie overshadowed, unfortunately? It overshadowed a very good decision. The casting of Sasha Cal as Kara Zor-El, who I think played her part really well. She does her own thing. She's just sticking to the script and I think just being a character. She's very much like a wild animal in this because she's still sort of learning how to adapt to this world, and still very sort of like, I guess, being locked up for many years really messes you up kind of thing. But here's the thing. Flashpoint, the story Flashpoint has already been done. There's already an animated film of it. And the real person who gets saved from being locked without sunlight for many years was Superman, Clark Kent, not Kara Zor-El. So redoing that with Kara Zor-El was okay, interesting, but so what? There's really nothing else here other than they just wanted a girl on the screen. And everything else is still a mess. And I think Ezra Miller, quite frankly, acted really well in this. Ezra Miller acted really well. If not for all the problems surrounding Ezra Miller by himself in this movie, it was Ezra Miller versus Ezra Miller. There's two of them, unfortunately, but I think he did really well. And I think what they should have done here is instead of having two Ezra Miller, have one Grant Gustin. Let's hear me out. Have one Grant Gustin, okay? And Michael Keaton's cool, but you need Ben Affleck a lot more because he was really, really good. and he deserves a lot more screen time, and he's definitely the best Batman. I'm sorry, he's the best Batman. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's what it is. All right, it's the Flash. It is very mess, and I think it just couldn't stand up to even the older Flash films, which is sad because the older Flash movies were not that good either. I think it's still DC still rocks in the animated series, and the animated films, and that's where their strength is. So if you guys really want a good Flash story, and a good DC story, um, please watch this. Justice League the Flashpoint Paradox, one of the best movies ever made, and it is a DC animated film. Look at this rating, 8 out of 10. You know what? I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because I think that's exactly what this thing deserves. It is so well done. It is its own unique story. It puts Superman aside because of the way time travel works, and it's an easy way to sort of nerf the character of Superman because otherwise a lot of people struggle on not knowing what to do with him. They just make him weird or weak or all of a sudden able to be beaten by every other character. That's not how Superman works. Superman is too powerful, which is why you got to come up with these unusual cases to actually get him out of the scene. And Flashpoint Paradox does that really well. They sort of just take him all off, just take him out of the equation using time travel as the reason. So it's pretty well done. The Little Mermaid. You know what? This was okay. Here's the thing, right? Halle Bailey or Hal Bailey, however you pronounce her name, would have done well in a movie, but this is not the movie. All right. The Little Mermaid is just a remake of the original The Little Mermaid, but worse. Like every other Disney remake, it is worse. There is no Disney remake that is good. Fight me in the comments. There is no Disney remake that is good. Go ahead. I want to see what you got. All right, that's pretty much it. The original Little Mermaid, I don't know why I rated this accidentally a 4. I think this was the rating supposed to be given the new one. But the original Little Mermaid, I think, was a 6 at best for me, just because Disney had so many strong films at the time. Um, but it's a really good movie. The music definitely carried this story, but the story itself is nothing special. It's also too short for me because it's a Disney cartoon, so what do you expect? They don't want kids to be watching films for too long, and the attention spans aren't that strong. But a lot of the other ones were actually just straight up better. Pocahontas, I think, was kind of predictable, so I don't know, 5, 6. Compared to Little Mermaid, maybe a 5. The original Beauty and the Beast. Wait, is this the original Beauty and the Beast? Oh, this is the original Beauty and the Beast? Oh shit, I'm sorry. This shouldn't be a 6, this should be an 8. Yeah, I think some of these were just better. If this is the original Mulan, it's probably a 6. The original Tarzan was, I don't know, it's a 5 for me. It wasn't that special. Disney's Aladdin was a 7. I might have messed up some of these ratings actually. I'm not sure what happened here. But yeah, you can see Snow White. I gave it a 9. The original Snow White, of course. Just because it was ahead of its time. There's no way anyone at that time could have even thought of making a film like that, and they did it. It was just too good and too genuine and too from the heart that that movie is just so good. But every other Disney remake has been just terrible. I think The Lion King I give it a 9 or 10 or something. But yeah, the rest of it is there, here and there. Hypnotic, hit and miss. It had potential that was underutilized, and I think there's a girl who's the key to everything, right? Is that a story? A girl who's the key to everything? Where's the is it a daughter or a son? Uh, Minnie, right? Yeah. Minnie grows up. Dad and mom has to fight to protect her. Both are psychics. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing really special there. Hypnotic is you can pass it. Air. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna give Air 3, but I think that this kind of stories is just so done. Like it's done. We know what these movies are gonna be like. It's like, oh, he's gonna talk to Michael Jordan to sell his boots. He sold his boots. Yay! It's so well directed. No, it's not. It's just whatever. I don't think it's anything special about this film. If you guys really liked it, I think that's good. I think the script writing is decent. The dialogues are okay. The inspirational speeches are not inspirational. I wouldn't use that speech in real life to sell anything at this point. I think that The Wolf of Wall Street showcased some of that actual talent and better writing than this movie. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The Nun 2, 2, 2 star. The worst of the franchise and a really a real middle finger to James Wan, because I think James Wan did so well to carry the Conjuring series that they're just taking his character Valak and then trying to do all kinds of nonsense with it, and they just don't know what to do with it because none of them are actually good writers or directors. And there's literally one guy in this film, and he's obviously going to be the villain, Maurice. Look at this. Look at this cast. Yeah, it's so weak. It's just such a weak film. I don't know what they were trying to do. Knock at the Cabin was a very weird movie. I thought it was interesting, like the first half an hour of it, but like all of these short psychological thriller films, the first half an hour is about as enticing as it gets. I think Get Out was a good example of a film that stays true to what it's trying to deliver throughout, and then in the end has this huge reveal and climax, and Get Out was brilliant. Knock at the Cabin was a Knock at the Cabin. That's pretty much it. Cocaine Bear, stupidly funny movie. If you want a movie where you just want to go and just have a few laughs, you can just watch the clips of Cocaine Bear on YouTube and not watch the film, trust me. Murder Mystery 2. I really like Adam Sandler and I wanted to give this film a try. Um, but he just didn't deliver this time. It was too predictable. Nothing special here. Me and my wife, we sort of just watched this for a few minutes and we just sort of guessed, okay, so this is what they're gonna do. This is how it's gonna be. Nothing really special. There's no murder mystery. And I think it really upsets actual murder mystery fans because for those of you who used to read murder mystery books, I don't know how many of you here are readers, but back in like when I was in school and whatnot, murder mystery books was a huge deal. There were a lot of them selling. You have to properly read the book to decipher what's going on. You got to imagine a lot of the situation, so you're literally drawing out the crime scene in your mind all the time. And you're getting bits and pieces of clues from different chapters and trying to put this puzzle together to solve it yourself. In a film, the problem with the film is because everything is shown to you, pausing more than 2 seconds on any object could give you the idea that that might be a clue. And usually, what films used to do creatively to offset this is have everything shown or laid out at the same pace. So the pacing of the film is more or less the same throughout until the climax, so that you sort of have your time to build towards the mystery to try to solve it yourself as the viewer. But murder mystery films nowadays just like, oh, okay, let's just do some comedy here and let's just get it over with and just reveal the big bad, and it's not even related to any of the clues given at the start. And it's just like, oh, this one coin was like sitting in the corner, and that coin reveals everything because that coin is like a quarter that was in the off position, and no one would put the position like that because no one is left-handed, and that means the killer is this guy. That's the kind of reveals they have nowadays, and it's absolutely stupid. The best thing of Murder Mystery 2, I'm already laughing because there's one scene where Adam Sandler actually fights off these people in like a minivan, and that scene is so funny because he no wait some oh my God, I think he choked someone and it's like an already dead person that he's trying to re-choke, or already shot person that's trying to re-choke, and he's just choking them again. The wife is like, no, this is like the dead person or something like that. Oh my God, that's such a funny scene in the truck. Well, let me look for it. Yeah, so it's this scene where there's like a tussle in the van. There's two bad guys that Adam Sandler is actually trying to take on in hand-to-hand combat. And what happens here is he has already killed one of them, and there's like the van just starts to swing around, and so the everything gets messed up in the van, and he grabs the wrong person here. So this happens. Yeah. Yeah, and that scene was just ridiculously funny because it's like he's actually trying to re-strangle the dead guy because things get messed up in the van. And some of these moments are showing you that there's still some intelligence involved in the way these comedies shot. And that's where Murder Mystery 2 had some potential, but it didn't do it anywhere else, honestly. Besides the van fight scenes, the rest of it was just meh. Nothing really special going on there. Um, MH370. For those of you guys who are not familiar with the story of MH370, it's a Malaysian plane that disappeared in 2014. And there were a lot of investigations engaged in the searching of the plane and its passengers. And the whole world was aligned that US was involved somehow. And this also came not too much as a shock because there were a lot of meetings between the then Prime Minister of Malaysia and Obama, I believe. and they were trying to sort things out internally, and there wasn't really much information given to the public as well. And there were a lot of people who try to do their own independent searches, a lot of crew, science crews, military vessels, all of these deployed, and the mystery remained unsolved. I think that Netflix is just milking the information they have and made their own documentary with it. I should just give this a one. And there's really no substance in this other than what people already know. And they also had some very irritating characters being interviewed again and again when everyone knew that they were not the important ones. And I think one of the most important characters in the story was a lady who actually told that she had discovered MH370 like within the first 30 minutes of the story, and everyone knows about her. She's like one of the like where is she? This one, Cindy, right? Right. So self-taught, not volunteer. Yeah. So this lady, Cindy Henry, is actually one of the few people who very early on believed that she had actually spotted the plane in the ocean, but no one actually listened to her. And there's actually clues to that in this film. But they also don't address them. They don't really talk about it. They don't really address anything. They don't address anything. Just tell the facts as is. Almost like you watching just the news or an existing facts of the YouTube video. You rather just read a Wikipedia page and you pretty much have gone through this film. There's really nothing here to watch other than just having that info spelled out for you. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny should have never been made. The Marvels is a good example of what not to do. The Last of Us. You know what? I'm going to give this a 2. This is not the worst TV series in the world, but just because the franchise was built of actually good story of a father and his sort of a like adopted daughter kind of tale, which is what the story of Joel and Ellie really is at its core. He's a father trying to protect his new daughter because his old one is dead, and he wants to do things right this time. And he's reluctant at first, but he sort of builds a relationship with her. They travel the world, or rather, they make a journey to travel to a place where they believe that potentially can find a cure because Ellie is actually immune. Had a very interesting premise. This world is full of zombies as a threat. There's action sequences throughout the game. If you guys are huge fans of PewDiePie, you would have watched that entire playthrough of him taking on these the zombies, the Big Mama, and all of that. And this TV series throws that all away for some weird woke agenda. The actress looks nothing like the original character of Ellie. I think Pedro Pascal at least looks like Joel, but as I said before, in this story, because of woke agenda, they threw away all the masculine characters and they just created some weird, I don't know, story that no one really cares about here. And I think Gabriel Luna as Tommy Miller is actually a good casting too. I think besides the two, everything else was just weak. Bella Ramsey is just terrible as Ellie. I don't know why they even tried. Like, she by herself is a good actress, don't get me wrong. She's able to do the scenes well because she's a good actress, but she's not Ellie. She's not believable as Ellie either. And it's very sad because the original story from the original game was very beloved, and I think that Neil Druckmann sort of took the opportunity to just turn this into woke garbage, and that's exactly what happened here. And as I think I've said this before, I think the better, like Pedro Pascal's okay as Joel Miller, I think, but I think the better casting would have been. Give me a sec. There you go. The better casting for Joel would have been Jensen Ackles. I think Jensen Ackles as Joel would have absolutely been incredibly amazing. This guy is a literal embodiment of a macho like guy who you can believe if he lost his daughter would have just broken down. He looks like Joel. He would be able to play the part absolutely well. And it is such a missed opportunity not to have him casted. And you'd have really had the dynamic of him and perhaps an actual teen girl, who actually looks something like Joel. I mean, something like Ellie, perhaps, to play the role would have been okay. But the series just deviated from the original game. The action sequences were significantly reduced, like by like 10 to 1. The original game has like 10 action sequences. The TV series has like a 1 per time. Uh, the There was no real effort put in to make this a real life adaptation, unlike One Piece, which actually put in all the effort to become what it originally is based off. And I think that there's a lot of love put into it that has to be respected. And this wasn't it. By itself, there's high production value here, you can tell from some of the scenes, but you know what? I'm just gonna stick to my one. I hate this. It's really no one wants this, no one cares about it. Anyone who rated this an 8, I think is just out of their minds because they are not fans of the original game, or they have some other agenda in their mind. And I think that's the case here. Last Voyage of the Demeter. I'm not sure why I ended up watching this. I thought maybe I can give it a chance. Very predictable story with just a vampire on board the ship, and everyone is just fine with it. Like everyone knows that there's a vampire on board, and gradually try to defeat it. When all you gotta do is just search the ship. Like how big can a ship be? You have a crew. Like it's your ship. You should be able to just search it and kill the vampire, so there's no real intelligence involved. What would have been cool is to have the vampire actually be among the crew and somehow immune to sunlight, and them having to figure out a way how to take on the vampire. That would have been pretty amazing. But having it weak to sunlight and then saying that we can't get it out of the ship when it's bright outside, it's such a weird. I don't know, like having these vampire stories where when sunlight is involved and you can actually catch that vampire and just put it in a place. It's There's no way you can't defeat it. Like it's very different in films like you know um even one of those Van Helsing stories, right? Like Dracula, the Gary Oldman Dracula, where what's his name? Anthony Hopkins plays Abraham Van Helsing. Keanu Reeves is in the film as well. In one of those movies, it's a bit interesting because you can't quite get a hold of Dracula during the daytime. But in this, it's just a crew on the ship. All you gotta do is just knock a few doors and you'll find out where Dracula's hidden. Then you just gotta put it in the sunlight and it's dead because it sleeps during the day, something like that. So it's a very weird story in itself and very predictable, nothing special. Totally Killer was trying to be a story with some woke satire comedy. And I was okay with it because I thought it was being satire to a point I couldn't really tell because the jokes just started to repeat itself. Like she kept calling some girl Mamacita or whatever. Like, what on earth? And then she sort of goes back in time to try to stop the killer. And she has to just reiterate every time how wrong the 80s were because everyone in the 80s just behaved differently from now, and now everything all of a sudden apparently is correct or right because it's current day and everyone is woke and that's the right way to do things. It doesn't work that way. And I think Totally Killer was proof that it just doesn't work in a film either. And you know what's a good example of a film that's done right in this format, where you have to go back in time to sort of stop the killer? Let me show you. There we go, 2017's Happy Death Day. This is a very good movie. It's about a girl who basically keeps reliving the same day until she solves the murder of herself. And this is so well done, so well acted. The characters were great. The story was tight enough to not give too many gaps or chances for what do you call this plot holes. It was very nice, neatly wrapped up and whatnot. Whereas in Totally Killer, you suddenly have like a family of like a black girl and her mom, who's all of a sudden the genius who can invent time travel. The young girl creates the time travel machine that her mom has been working on, and they don't even explain the premise of why the mother is able to have the notes of a time travel machine just lying around and the daughter is able to nab it. Like, if you were actually working on time travel, the entire government, I'm sure, in the world would be involved in some way, and you'll have spies around your house all the time. Your daughter wouldn't just be able to walk away with notes of how to build a time machine and able to figure it out by herself because no one is a genius at 12 years old to build a time machine, guys. Let's be realistic. If you want to tell that someone can build a time machine and they're such a genius, you should at least compare it to someone who's actually able to build something very high tech. For example, a Tesla model, I don't know, 3 or whatever, right? Can you find me a kid who can build a Tesla Model 3? If you can, find out how old that kid would be. I'm betting that kid is nothing, maybe 17, 18 years old, right? Able to build a Tesla Model 3. And then ask that kid to build that car by himself or herself, right? Meaning no help from the government, no funding, no parts. Figure it out by yourself. Would you get a Tesla Model 3? No. Will it run like a Tesla Model 3? No. Will it work? No, because that's the reality. You can't achieve it. It's not possible. So at least make it compelling, make it realistic. You need to have someone really experienced to hand down some kind of knowledge to be able to build a time machine like that. And this story just didn't put in any effort whatsoever. Like, she didn't even say that this device was built by my mom in her laboratory and I stole it and I'm just trying to plug it into this sort of photo booth. That would work because it is existing technology that has already been improved on a million times. But in this, she's just like, oh, I read it off a notebook and I'm able to build it by myself. And this is all you need to build a time machine. I'm just going to plug some wires here and there and boom, time machine. No, you don't have the tech. You don't have the ability to build some of those parts that you actually need, some of those niche elements. I don't know. They just want women in STEM and we get it, but it's just overdone to the point where it's not even realistic and no one cares. And good luck to the Ironheart movie, Marvel. Just good luck. 65. Oh my God, this movie. I just watched this, so I'm gonna untick it. This movie was missed opportunity. I don't know. Jurassic Park combined with um one of those space expedition kind of stories. Just avoid this movie. It's really nothing here for you to watch. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was an absolute trash film. One of the worst movies ever made. I think comparable to the Marvels. Hmm. Hmm. I still think it's probably zero point 0.5 better than the Marvels, but they're both really bad. Insidious the Red Door was, I don't know what this movie was. I just hated it. I'm gonna give it a 1. It had so many problems. Like I'm telling you guys, I hate these films not because I genuinely hate them. Like I'm okay with whatever attempts were done to make the Marvels, The Last of Us, Indiana Jones. I understand what goes behind these films and what kind of dedication these people have to put in. I understand it. All right. I don't fully know it. I don't fully understand it, but I understand it to the level that I can. It's sort of like as a person who eats food, I can tell that the chef put in effort to fry certain things a certain way. I can tell they put in effort to sort of freeze dry some items to be able to cook it or to seal back certain items to be able to blanch it. I know that that effort is being put in. I don't fully know exactly how they do it or exactly how much effort is put into dry it. I don't know how long it's hang dried. I don't know how well it's sealed. I don't know how particular they are with the sealing technique used. Do they put in a specific kind of gas to seal it? None of these things specifically. But I understand that that effort was put in. And I can tell you that these films don't have that heart, soul, and love, and the story is just terrible, and they're just bad. And that's as much as I can go with it. I have not watched the rest of those films below Insidious The Red Door, so I'm going to stop it here. And I think I've dug deep enough to explain to you about most of these movies, especially the ones that I really liked this year. But as you can see, 2023 was a very bad year for films, and I really just want to get a move on. I think this year is a win for video games, and I think Baldur's Gate 3, Dave the Diver, Sea of Stars, Alan Wake 2, all of those games were really good, really, really good. Marvel Spider-Man game was really bad. Um, what was the other one? There's one more game. Hogwarts Legacy was decent. Hogwarts Legacy was a decent game. At its core, it could have been bigger, but I think that they didn't really have the ability to make a bigger game. But Baldur's Gate 3 definitely showcased one of the best games in the past decade, probably 2 decades. I think it's best RPG game ever made, honestly. And I think this year was great for gaming because it had such big titles competing, whereas in the filmmaking industry they just didn't have anything really competing. You know, like if you go back to the days of Star Wars Episode 5, there was so many good big movies going on at the time that it's so hard to choose. You wanted to go to the cinema every week just because it's always a good film. I remember just like 15 years ago, I would want to be at the cinema almost every other weekend. Like a month, I think there's 2 good movies being released, and I would be at the cinema like twice a month. So I used to always have some pocket money saved just to go to the cinema for it, to get the popcorn, the drinks, the whole combo, and to just sit down and enjoy with my friends, call some people over. And we don't even get that bonding time nowadays because no one wants to even go out to watch a film because there's nothing to watch. So people would only want to go out for some physical activity, and that's the most, I guess. And there's really nothing else to do in the mall, so people don't really go and hang out, unless you're doing shopping the whole day or just checking out some weird stuff or just window shopping, right? But back then, movies just drive people to malls, and that was one of the cool things. Like you'd go there, you hang out at the mall, you do your window shopping, you play some arcade games, you would check out some cool stuff, actually do some real shopping, and then once you've got all this agenda off your list, you end your day with a good movie. Then you get some good food. You sit down and chat about the movie that you just watched and how cool it was and how exciting it was and how you want to go and watch it again. And those were the glory days, I would say, of cinema, and that's no longer it. And now with everything going towards TV films and TV series and people having better equipment at home to watch movies as well, the production budgets also really not showcasing what they're not being reflecting exactly the quality of films. Like the higher the budget, the higher the quality of the film, as it should be, but it's not being reflected right now. And I think movies have to trim down the budget to actually focus on filmmaking and quality instead of just throwing whatever nonsense and woke agenda in the way and politics. Like we don't care, guys. John Wick was good because it didn't have politics. One Piece was good because it didn't have politics. Super Mario Brothers was good because it didn't have politics. Oppenheimer had politics, and that's why I'm taking off some points from it. But it was still well. written and well showcased politics in the sense where it has objectively good notions. It wants to tell you about these politics because it's important in the course of history, not to correct it, but for you to understand it, for you to understand how the world works. And the world is not something that we have to just keep correcting. We should keep improving, but improving doesn't always mean righting wrongs because some wrongs have to exist for some right to exist, and there's that balance that people quite don't quite understand how to strike. And I think that's where there's a problem here. So thanks so much for watching and sticking around for this ridiculously long video of film reviews for 2023 and rant. And as always, I appreciate you guys joining me. It has been a long time since I've been doing these film reviews, and I absolutely love and enjoy movies, and I've been doing it for a very, very long time. As you can see, in this channel, it's as much as I could throw out in the past few years, but and it's just the beginning, I'm sure, of what's another 2, 3 decades of me just watching movies and keep talking about this. And I want to keep doing this. I really enjoy movies, and I want to keep driving this passion forward. And I really don't care if my channel doesn't grow or if this YouTube channel is just whatever, right? Because in real life, I'm gonna keep growing my IMDb portfolio because I'm a huge movie buff, and so are you if you're watching this, right? So look at all these wonderful films that I used to rate like 8, 9, 10, that all these films were drawn out over the years. Look how much of variety there is, how much of color, how much of passion, and you can tell that each of these movies had its own unique story and stood on its own, and until today could be rewatched and retold. And movies are trying to recreate these films because of how genius they were. Terminator 2 was one of the best movies ever made, guys. This movie is insane. Until today, they can't redo this. Wall-E, so much heart and passion. Born Identity was so cool. Transformers, the original Michael Bay film, 2007. Zack Snyder's Justice League, which in itself is not the greatest, as I said. I want to rate this a little bit lower, but I really love it because of how the fan base drove this film to be re-released. Transformers, Watchmen, Mr. Robot, American Psycho, Drunken Master, Lord of the Rings, Full Metal Alchemist. All of these movies are just great. So, in comparison to how my top 100 chart is, this movie this year, none of them make it. None of them, and it's a pain, honestly. I really wish that there were just better movies out there to take on the world. And I think as Hollywood and cinema as a whole find a balance, there might be a time when things sort of reshape itself. And I think that some of the Asian movies have been doing well over the years. There's one I watched called The Medium. The Medium came out in 2021. It's a very good horror movie. I highly recommend this if you guys have not watched it. Sorry, actually, I should give this a high rating, 4 or 5. I think this is a very creepy, genuinely scary movie. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give it a 4. There's some parts that are a bit boring about it, but it has this genuine horror creep to it. And there's just better movies out there like Shudder and whatnot, and so it falls short. But there are some efforts put in by these Asian films, and I think there's one that I have on my watch list that I'm really waiting for this year, which is Godzilla. Here we go, -1. I'm really looking forward to this film. I'm hearing so many good things about it, and I want to watch it, and I'm sure I'm gonna enjoy it because I'm a huge fan of these kinds of what do they call it? Give me a second. Right, the term is tokusatsu. Tokusatsu is a Japanese live-action film that has heavy use of practical special effects. I'm a huge fan of this genre of tokusatsu films, especially Ultraman, Godzilla, these kinds of things. And yeah, it's just why I definitely want to watch this. I'm a huge fan of this, like this technique and this filmmaking style, which has really driven a lot of the olden day special effects, and even modern special effects are driven by it. And I really want to see how the fusion between the quality of special effects together with practical effects is used to make a film like Godzilla -1. And I hear that at its core, there's also a good story. So I haven't had too many spoilers about this, so I'm gonna save it for myself to actually watch this movie and enjoy it. But yeah, that's about it from me for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.